Okay, so I did a quick run through of a few itineraries, just to get some observations, and I do have some feedback and some questions, maybe some concerns and opportunities. But I figured I would just kind of run through a few of the itineraries. I am a little bit out of practice, but and I'm sure that some of this has been discussed. But these are some of the things that I would look for. Just starting with itinerary 12.3. So climbing track, I like the program-oriented routes. I think that that offers a sort of a different feature for some people that are interested. This is a nice route. It has a good shape to it. You got a pretty nice elevation profile here. But running through the itinerary here, so this is a climbing-based trek. Starts with challenge course events. That's great early in the trek to have that with the crew for team development. The inspiration point is excellent for the ranger. So the ranger's still with their crew this morning, and inspiration point. I know when I was a ranger and I did my wilderness pledge at inspiration point, um, I had an advisor cry on me. And anytime that you're a ranger and you can make that impact with the crew, that it brings tears to their eyes. You know that you're doing a good job and you're really getting to them. So I like the way that this trek starts, and then but then I have some questions after that. So as you'll notice here, they're staying at Stockade Ridge, and then the next day that they're going to climb the tooth, which is great. You want to offer that to people when you can. They're kind of going backwards from traffic, where they're going to start at Stockade Ridge, uh, go up the ridge trail, and then come backwards along the Tooth Ridge and back down to Miners Park. It's a very long day, so this day is actually probably the hardest one of the whole trek. And they need to get to Miners Park. You'll notice that they have a food pickup here, and so they got to get to Miners Park to pick up their food. I'm guessing that dinner will be the first meal offered in that pickup, and so they do have to get there in a timely fashion. But also, it's a challenge because they got to get there early enough to sign up for rock climbing the next day. And if it's competitive, they have a lot of crews on base, then they might not have the opportunity to sign up for rock climbing. But that's not the sort of the biggest hiccup here. I think that if you're looking at the next day, Miners Park to Black Mountain, it's another pretty long day with 7.8 miles. They're tired from the Miners Park day the day before. And then they also have to do conservation on this day. And if you notice, the conservation is at North Fort Curaca at 10:30 a.m. So it's actually out of camp and on their way to Black Mountain in the morning. So you got to wonder, when are they actually going to climb at Miners Park? I think that this is a potential customer service failure here. They picked the climbing itinerary because they want to do climbing. And here, I think that would be, from what I'm seeing, it would be impossible to offer that to them. And so there's solutions there, but that's just an observation. Um, Moving on. So this day, let's see, they're going from Divide Camp, 8.4 miles to Sawmill. Let's take a look at it up here. So Divide Camp here, and then 8.4 miles to Sawmill. They're going to side hike Mount Phillips, and then go down to Sawmill from there. Except if you notice on here, it actually doesn't say Mount Phillips. And so here you would put, Mount Phillips here. Get to Sawmill for a food pickup. They'll probably want to take showers there at Sawmill, and then do the rifle shooting. So they will need to leave early this day if they want to accomplish those objectives. And really, what I would do is look a little bit closer at this and see how I might reroute this itinerary. The next day from Sawmill down to Lambert's Mine, that's a pretty easy hike. It is 6.6 miles, but a lot of it's downhill. And I think that here you actually could offer the Cypher's Mine tour of the actual mine. So you could put a mine tour there, because here, whether they get to it this day, or really they could also do it the next morning before they leave, because they have this layover day at Cedo at the end of their trip. And so they could do the next morning, still get to Cedo with plenty of climbing gym, traverse wall opportunities, and then do the advanced climbing at the end of the trek. Sometimes at the end of the trek, crews are less interested in program and more interested in relaxing and eating and showers and things like that. So that's something to look out for with offering this advanced on the last day. But all in all, it's not a bad trek. But it is interesting. This just your heaviest mileage here, and then trying to include the climbing here. So some things that you could consider is, one thing that you could look at is potentially just flip-flopping this itinerary and doing it backwards. And I think that has merit to it. So you drive them Webster, they hike to Cedo. They have 2 days at Cedo. They jump up to Lambert's Mine. That's not too bad. And they do that program. Then they head up to Sawmill from there. They take their showers and do the rifle shooting. And then from Sawmill, they can head up to the Divide, no problem, and side hike the Phillips. Heading down to Black Mountain from there is easy. It's all downhill. And here's where the advantages come in. So Black Mountain to Miners Park, the conservation would be on your way to Miners Park. So you get up early at Black Mountain. From Divide to Black Mountain, you get there soon enough to do Black Mountain's program the previous day. So you're not having to do that the morning that you're getting to Miners Park. But you can hustle up, get to your conservation, then get to Miners early enough that you can have climbing that same day. And then from here, you could do Miners Park and up and over the Tooth and down to Stock. You could continue this itinerary, no problem. But looking at this, challenge course events at the end of your itinerary as less impactful of a program. Crews are less interested. By here they're in the norming, forming, storming, and performing phase, hopefully of their team building. So challenge course events are meant earlier in the trek. What I might look at, Miners Park. So they could do the program this at Miners Park the same day, but they are having to do conservation that morning. What I would do is also do Miners Park program in the morning, and maybe over here instead of Stockade Ridge, let's shoot them over to maybe like the Magpie, so that then it's a shorter hike from Miners Park down to Magpie, so they can do climbing in the morning. Magpie is right next to the high ropes course for the Cope Tower. And so they get to Magpie that evening, maybe in time to do high ropes course. But instead of going to Uraka, I would do a layover at Magpie here. So do that 2 days in a row. So you got Cedo down here, climbing focused. Miners Park, they can do climbing in the afternoon and the next morning. Magpie, they can do climbing in the afternoon. And then this next morning, I would just side hike the Tooth so that their campsite's all set up. They're not carrying their packs up the Stockade Ridge Trail, which is not ideal. I think that trail used to be an emergency-only trail, and it's become a heavy-use crew program trail, which is fine. But anytime that you can do it without having to carry your packs, I think that's good. So layover day at Magpie, more opportunity for program, and then side hiking the Tooth from there. And then from here, ending your trek. So you side hike a Tooth on your second to last day, and then maybe you do one last high Cope Tower after hiking up the Tooth for sunrise or something. You do Cope Tower and get that excellent view of the Tooth that you just climbed. Maybe a group photo on top of the high ropes course there, and then you can make your way up. It's a short jaunt up to Uraka. So I would finish with Uraka here, and they don't need to get to Uraka early, because like I said, the challenge course events is less relevant later in the trek. So they just need to get there for the campfire, and ending the trek with a campfire is an excellent way to end a trek with, where you don't have that down at Cedo, but doing that at Uraka, that's when you can really make that last impact. Except a little bonus there is that the next morning they get up and they get to do the sunrise at Inspiration Point on their last morning on trail. That's very impactful, and then head down to the Zastro turnaround from there. So I think there's a lot of benefits to just flip-flopping this itinerary and turning it around. But you call it a climbing trek, and the way it is, you can't do climbing here at Miners Park, so you're setting yourself up for customer service failure there. And I think that was most of what I saw on this one. 12.6, let's see here. Not a bad trek. You got a nice loop here, great elevation profile. All right, coming down. So just looking at this, day 2, you're with your ranger. This day 2 is meant for the ranger to go over staff camp procedures with the crew. So in this case, they're doing a Brayu. I don't know if they're doing search and rescue at Carson Meadows or not. That's in here, but I understand. I thought Carson Meadows was being rested this season, so that's a question mark there. But the thing I wanted to point out was 5.4 miles on day 2. It's doable, but this is a challenging dezgnation. It's not a rugged or a strenuous. And so day 2, that could be a lot for a crew. There is a lot of elevation change there. When you're going to crags, you can't take off a whole lot of distance, but instead of Rimrock Park, I might do Old Abreu, and that at least gives you an extra half mile. So that would be, maybe like 2.7 miles here, but only 5 miles here. And so it does sort of balance out the mileage a little bit better for the ranger, because the ranger with their crew, the most important thing here is that ranger is teaching the crew and ensuring that they're meeting those guidelines and safety issues and processes, and then delivering the message of Philmont with those crews strong enough that they are going to be solid for the rest of their trip. And if they can't do a good job here, that crew is going to struggle for the rest of their trip and have trickle down negative impacts on backcountry staff and other crews and our resources and animals. So we definitely want to protect the ranger time here and give them the tools they need. All right, so then this other sort of weird anomaly here, Apache Springs on day, so this is a 2.2 mile day. It just seems really weird because you got a 2.2 mile day here. You have this 11.6 mile day here. And I think that what you could look at here, and also you got 2 back-to-back staff camps. The ideal formula is trail camp, staff camp, trail camp, staff camp, when possible. But I think if you just went ahead and combined Apache Springs and Crooked Creek, so they're going to Agua Fria to Crooked Creek. They're picking up their food here. They are doing this program, and then they're overnighting at Crooked Creek. Well, that's a 7.3 mile day. That's very reasonable. You're sort of escalating their mileage over time. There's not a lot of elevation gain, so it's not a super hard hike. And then they stay at Crooked Creek, and that opens up a day for you. And here's what I would do is have just a Red Hills layover day. So I think that a lot of the itineraries, it's interesting because the Mount Phillips is a lot different than Baldy in the itineraries, but in logistics and reality, just like Baldy, where you're staying at Copper Park or something and doing a layover day with a loop, that I think is the ideal setup for Phillips as well. So I would do a layover day at Red Hills. And then the way to do Phillips, and I've seen this a couple times in the itinerary, is you go from Crooked Creek or Comanche or something like that to Red Hills. On the day that you're supposed to climb Mount Phillips, you just jaunt up there to Red Hills. You set up your camp early in the morning because you want to get up to Phillips in the before 2, up the mountain by 12, down by 2. And so if you follow the itinerary as it's read, you get the sense that you would go from Red Hills back down and around over to, Crooked Creek, go up to Clear Creek and do the program there, and then climb Mount Phillips from there, and then come down to Red Hills with your pack the whole time. But in reality, if you're a crew and you're trying to save time, going up to Red Hills first, setting up camp, grabbing a day pack and a lunch and a water bottle, and then heading up and over and then down to Clear Creek from there. So because it's a layover day, you can get up super early, climb Mount Phillips. You can watch sunrise from Mount Phillips. And then I would put this first in the description, and then have this also opens up more time at Clear Creek. So you could actually do the guns here and do some black powder shooting, which is always a neat program for a lot of people. And you could fit that in there by going this route. And so that makes a nice day there. That would be my recommendation. All this, of course, comes down to the skills of your trip planners and your logistics staff, which is why it's so critical to hire good people there. But that can sometimes be a challenge. And so that would be my recommendation here. Moving on. All right, so here they're at Red Hills. They're supposed to go to Bobby Inn. I've seen this a couple times in the itinerary where they're picking up food at PJ on this day. And what that does, it does say climb Big Red here, but if you're looking at the map, there's a couple routes you could take, and there's a motivation there to go from Red Hills downhill and just follow the creek to PJ. And in that case, you're backtracking a little bit, and I think that does our crews a disservice because they're seeing the same trail twice. Whereas the best route is to go up and over and bag the peaks, Big Red, and then you can jump onto Bonito Peak as well. Come down the ridge line, that's not too bad. But having the PJ food pickup here, it kind of incentivizes going the other way, which is less ideal. So anyway, on this layover day, I would actually move this down to Beaubien because you want them to go from Red Hills to Beaubien and then side hike down to PJ for their food, and that's how I would do it. But there's another reason why I would do this, and I'll get to it in a minute. So layover day, they got the horse rides at Beaubien Conservation Project. So here's another thing, moving right along, and I like it in this itinerary. So Beaubien to Miners Park, the rock climbing is scheduled for the following morning, and we don't see this in other itineraries. A lot of itineraries will say Miners, you're going from Beaubien, you're going to hike Trail Peak, you're going to go to Crater Lake and do their program, and then you're going to go to Miners Park and go rock climbing. Well, by the time you get to Miners Park, it's either too late or, it's usually too late. But if you get there early enough to climb, it doesn't mean that the time slots are going to be full, which they probably will be by the time you get there. And so what you want to do whenever possible, one great option, you can really you can side hike Trail Peak just fine from Beaubien on a layover day, and that's what I would do. I would move. I guess in the itineraries that have rock climbing here, if the rock climbing is here, I would try to side hike Trail Peak on this day, and I think that moving horse rides or conservation to this day would be better because from Red Hills to Beaubien, it is a fairly easy hike and downhill. And then they get there early enough to do horse rides or conservation. And then the next day is when they do the side hike to get their food. And so at Apache, you're still within the 3-day limit for picking up food at Apache. It looks like you're carrying more food up on this 11.6 day. The long days, you want to be low on food and weight, but because they are setting up camp and side hiking this route, it doesn't matter how much food they have because they're leaving most of it at camp. So pick up an extra day that includes this day, and then move the PJ food pickup to this day. So then the benefit of that is that you no longer need this miner's food pickup because you pick up food here, and then you have 1, 2, 3 days here of food. And so what you've done is you've now saved commissary staff time. This is one more logistic that your crews don't have to be worried about. I think sometimes we have the resource, so we feel like we need to utilize it. But I think that in this case, just having the crews have the 2 commissary food pickups makes sense, and not doing it at miners. I think there's some trickle down benefits to, the commissaries, food, staffing, all those sorts of things. And that's how I would play that. Moving along, 12.8. All right, I love the treks that hike in and out of base. That's wonderful. I think that's that has a lot of pride with it. I like how it's just a nice loop here. That's a great looking, visually looking trek. And of course, hiking in and out of base saves a lot of money, and it allows your ranger more authority over their time management on those first couple days. So that's nice. Moving on, this is in general, I really like this trek, and I wish I knew who designed it. I did notice a couple of these treks still have some of my signature to it, and I'll show one here at the end. But this has a nice mileage distribution. It's pretty even throughout. The Beaubien, the low mileage here on Beaubien is nice because this is your chance to take showers and things like that in the food pickup. Cimarroncito, so you're with the ranger on this day. Yeah, the mileage is a little bit high, but I think this is it's still a challenging course, but the mileage, yeah, it's a little bit high. And so that's something to be cognizant of. The ranger might foreshadow or with the crew just say, hey, by the way, because it's our first day and we're doing instruction, anticipate maybe not doing rock climbing, but we are going to get to do the climbing wall, and the bouldering gym. And so what I would do here is maybe just go ahead and write that in here. Remove rock climbing. If they happen to get there early enough to do that, that's a happy surprise. Like they feel at that point, they feel like you're going above and beyond. Whereas here it's an expectation. And so put climbing gym and wall there. They got the Cimarron Pseudo food pickup. So that's another thing that a logistic they have to do on that ranger instruction day. All right, so here's the biggest, I think, pitfall of this is that the next day they are going from Cimarron Pseudo to Thunder Ridge. This is one of the harder days of their trek. They have 1, 2, 3, 4 days worth of food. By the way, they have to pick up all their water at Cypher's Mine and then hike it up to Thunder Ridge. And so the pitfall, and I think I know maybe the reasoning behind it, but including a mine tour here. And I know for me, when I manage these camps, Cypher's Mine was one of the worst. And you put your more experienced and dedicated staff there because they have to just handle a lot of tough hasties. But more importantly, these the mine tours and the late nights with the music and those sorts of things. And I can't tell you how wonderful the staff that we hire are. Their ability to, if I was a crew and I was promised this mine tour here, and I know that they're not promised. I mean, it says, they might not get to do this stuff, but if they see it on here, that's the impression that you're leaving. And so I think it's always better to under promise and over deliver, even if it means you're not identifying potential program. I think you're doing yourself, there's more risk to identifying this than leaving it off. And then if it happens, great. But they might have put mine tour on here because, in situations where you're going to a dry camp, it's good to cook a dinner for lunch when you do have access to water. So maybe their theory was, hey, the crew's going to cook dinner for lunch here, and that's going to take some time. They can go do a mine tour. Really, I would save that for later because this is a very tough hike with heavy packs, and it's only their 3rd day. And so if they're struggling and all that, my recommendation is just go ahead and remove mine tour. Now, one thing that Cypher's Mine can do, and I've talked about it, is sort of more of the passive or secondary programming. They might not be able to give a mine tour, but maybe they can have some mine artifacts there in front of the camp, and while the crew's taking a break there, they can talk about what the mine tour would look like with some real artifacts and things like that. So I would recommend removing that. Then just, one other thing, just once again, the challenge course events at the end of a trek. I mean, it can be a challenge to get crews interested in this early in a trek. Late in a trek, it just doesn't have as much benefit, and crews are even less interested. So, looking at options there, whether, and anytime that you see an opportunity or a potential pitfall, you identify it and then you backdate the solution. So in this case, maybe don't worry about getting to Uraka in time for challenge course events. What does that open up? Well, maybe that morning before they go to Uraka, maybe they do the Crater Lake. Maybe they can squeeze in a Crater Lake spar pole on this day. So you could do that. I know that, spar poles, those primary programs are reserved for crews at the camp, but in this case, they do have the time for it because I would not offer the challenge course events here. But yeah, Uraka campfire, a great way to sort of end a trek. Sunrise, absolutely great way to end a trek. And then obviously climbing the tooth is wonderful. So that all looks good. This is in general a pretty good program. I do have a little bit of concerns about the amount of food that they're carrying, but because at PJ, this is a light day here, so they're losing some food there. At CETA, there's just not a whole lot of ways around it. There, great. So 12.9. I love this elevation profile. That's a nice looking elevation profile. All right. Once again, some good mileage distributions. It's nothing too crazy, but it is, every day has meaningful miles. I love that we're utilizing blackjacks and other camp. We're starting to encroach upon the burn area and redevelop it because there's some really wonderful parts of Philmont in that area historically and sights to see and things like that. Blackjacks is one of those with that sort of notoriety there. So I think that's great that they're using that. Here's the biggest issue here. And there's a couple times in the itineraries that We are showing program on day one. This really, we should be pretty firm about not offering program on day one. We need to reserve these days for ranger instruction. We need to respect the needs of the ranger to facilitate that. And I think that if you're promoting this program there, you're setting the ranger up for a difficult situation. If that ranger needs to spend more time with the crew, or if they have a late bus time and so they have less time in camp, I think probably why they did that is the bus drops off right there at CETA, and so yeah, do the program and then go to the camp is what you would think, but really, you really should just get dropped off. It's different than going down to the Rayado Museum. I think doing the Rayado Museum on your way into the backcountry, that provides, I think, a different perspective than simply just a program, like a program, like a neat program. It's the museum, I think, shifts the mindset, so there's more of a deeper meaning there. In this case, this is just a program, and I would take it off entirely, or what I would do is just move it to the next day, because they can easily get up early and do that the next day, and then come back around and head up to Blackjacks from there. Maybe the theory behind this was if you do program AM on this day, and this is another thing seen throughout the itineraries, is sometimes there's programs in the mornings of areas where you could be setting up for a potential safety issue. In this case, hiking up Bear Canyon to get to Blackjacks on a hot day, that canyon is south facing and it gets very hot. And so maybe they put the program here because that if they did it this morning, then they might be hiking in the hot part of the day. I don't think that really holds up in this situation, but in other areas, that is a concern. Once again, just preserving the importance of the ranger instruction on day one, and then moving all that program and sort of the staff camp instruction to day two is ideal. And that's really not much of a extra little hike there. No problem there. Okay. Oh, here's the example. Okay, so Poniel, they're going to Poniel on this day. Poniel to Metcalf Station has horse rides the morning that they leave to go to Metcalf. And so that's what I was talking about, where from Poniel to Metcalf, it's not super challenging, but it's something just to consider and be aware of, that it is a hot canyon. And if you do horse rides in the morning, and then you say, hey, let's eat lunch and then go hike, well, now you're hiking in the hot part of the day and there's not a lot of cover and you're trying to get to Metcalf and it's uphill. So you just got to be cognizant of that. And when possible, do go ahead and shift the itineraries. So what I might do, they got the conservation project at Elkhorn. That's 2 p.m. at Elkhorn. So Blackjacks to Elkhorn, 5 miles, but it's not too much elevation change. You could Elkhorn to Poniel. You know what I would do is I would just say this is what I would do, and there's a couple places that I would do this is maybe just say cowboy action shooting or horse rides. And I don't think that we're doing anybody a disservice there. I think we're allowing crews to make those decisions before they come in for the summer. So as they're discussing the itineraries with their crew, they can say, what's the priority for us? Do we want to go horseback riding, or do we want to do the cowboy action shooting? And so they arrive with that expectations. Now, if you get to do both, that's just, once again, when you're going above and beyond and exceeding the expectations. So I think for safety, it's always good to put, cowboy action shooting or horse rides, and then really give them the pickle when you get to do both. And that also mitigates, the cowboy action shooting is just a huge bottleneck for us. And so it helps the staff facilitate that program better, manage the capacity loads for program on that. Great. So cowboy chuck wagon dinner, cantina, yep. Pick up food and then head on. Yeah. All in all, it's a really good itinerary here, though. I like it a lot. 12:10. Yeah, this is fine. I know this is unavoidable sometimes, but when you get itineraries crossing themselves, it can be a little wonky. I think it's nice when they don't cross, but like that saying where it's you get there, it's when you go there again, it's a different place because now you've hiked through the backcountry and you see it with different eyes. But elevation profile is kind of weird here. They jump up pretty quickly and then they have a steady decline. And really, you want an elevation profile that's opposite of this. Now, I know, just in general, I know that a lot of these itineraries are due because you're having to manage all these capacities and flows and things like that. And so I understand that sometimes you get stuff like this because that's what you have to do. But other times, I think sometimes, we have 16 people in those committee meetings developing working really hard to develop great itineraries. I know I was in those meetings and I did it, but then at the very end, that person in charge is doing the data entry into the system, and then they realize that, oh, they've met their capacity at campsites and they have to do like a last minute switcheroo. And I'm sure they do what they think is best, but that's so they're tweaking it after all of our committee has made these itineraries. They tweak it right at the end to make it fit our needs. But then I think that sometimes the tweak at the end is rushed or not as thought out, and I've seen a couple things where you just got to maybe look a little bit closer. Okay, here's one that I would have concerns about: Flume Canyon on day one. So, I realize that I think we're now up into the rugged territory. So yeah, a more challenging trek is fine, but even on the super strenuous treks, you still want to preserve the rangers' ability to instruct their crew on these first 2 days. And so Flume Canyon, that's really a day 2 camp. And trying to get there on day 1 is a push, and that I would ixnay that. I just don't think that's great for a crew and a ranger to do that. Also, offering program on day 1. That's not an idea. Now, yeah, maybe they do get to do some program as they pass through. But if I was a ranger and I had 4.7 miles and my crew was less experienced, less physically capable, things like that, I'd want to keep moving to camp and get there because we have a lot of instruction to do with the crews on that day 1. They sign the card that they've checked off all these items, and of course every ranger knows they can't leave until it's signed, and so there's this implicit motivation for rangers to get it signed and maybe do a quick job on it. If you're having to deal with weather situations and things like that, a lot of times we're going through these itineraries and we're picturing perfect scenarios, but yeah, this should really be like a 2 to 3 mile day, and then maybe go to Flume Canyon the next day. But that's really a second day camp right there. 4.7 is not good for the first day. Okay, Elkhorn, pass through at here and then head down to Poneal and cowboy action shooting. So yeah, I guess it's just a long day. They got to pick up food, 4 days worth of food, and then so conservation project at Sioux. That was it. Yeah. So let's see. They're going to be at Sioux at 2 p.m. And here's what they have to do. They have to hike from Elkhorn all the way down to Poneal. They have to get there by 2 p.m. for the conservation. And by the time they've done that conservation, they're just not going to have time for cowboy action shooting. And so you really shouldn't put that on there. And then once again, say you move that to day 2. Now you're doing cowboy action shooting in the AM. And Heart Peak, we had, I know when I was there, we commonly had issues on Heart Peak with the heat and things like that. So just being careful about offering program the next morning. And of course, our staff, we hire the best staff in the world, and they bend over backwards for these people. And so if this crew really wanted the cowboy action shooting, the staff are going to do everything they can to get it to them. I know sometimes they even do it before breakfast, and that's not something that we should put on our staff, but unfortunately, that's what we do. And so that's why it's so important to try and mitigate these things before the summer so that our staff are not feeling overwhelmed. We're not dealing with poor reviews from customers, and we really set it up nicely. So anyway, you could move that to the next morning, but then you're probably doing a deficit to your Indian Writings program there. But if I'm a kid and I want to choose between shooting guns or, archaeology, I think most kids would choose guns. And so maybe they sacrifice this program so they can do the sports action shooting. And, of course, you can also, it's not too much like I said, find the issue and then backdate the solution, but you can move this to the next morning and move this to the next morning. But this is the biggest concern because it's a safety concern. And I just advise against doing any program the morning that you're trying to go up and over a hot ridge line or something like that with 4 days of food. All right, 12:11. Okay, what's going on here? Hunting lodge. Okay, Arrowhead. I love that they're hiking out of base. Arrowhead Hunting Lodge. So they're still with their ranger on this day. Then they head up to Cypher's Mine. The ranger leaves that morning. 6.2 mile day, not super challenging. Okay, so here's the deal. They got to go to Cedo to pick up food, and then you offer them the climbing gym here. But you offer them that, and then you also offer them the mine tour here. So I think that's what I was looking at there. And so I would go ahead and just go ahead and the mine tour is just always a concern because it's always a bottleneck. Everybody wants to do it. I know when I was there, the staff did a fantastic job of actually reducing the time of the mine tour, running the crews in there quick, getting things done and coming back out. Because we also had an oxygen issue in the mine. Our meters kept going off. We had to find a way to pump oxygen into the mine. And so that's the other issue. And it's a legitimate issue. You have people in there breathing and they're sucking up the oxygen, and there's not as much airflow in there as you have in the Aztec up at Baldy Town, French Henry. So I'll just go ahead and remove that. And, once again, maybe you can get it done. That's great. You can't move it to the next day because they have a really busy day the next day. So it's better just to go and take it off. And then they can get quality program at Cedo. They have to go to Cedo anyway for food. Might as well do climbing gym, maybe do rock, get on the rocks. That's you want to get there early if that's the plan. Bobian, oh, here's a missed opportunity. So horse rides are important. We hire our wranglers, we hire our staff, and we promise them that we're going to give them meaningful employment to carry out the mission. And so wherever possible, we want to give them that mission and also use we're spending a lot of money on our animals. We might as well use them. The animals are depreciating financially, so we might as well go ahead and use them. So there's a great opportunity to just go ahead and add horses here. So the Clear Creek Bobian, nice little side hike to PJ, and they got Chuck Wagon dinner, which is nice. And yeah, Bobian to Lobo, you can easily side hike Trail Peak. That's included in the 7 miles there, and then also do horses that morning. So get up early, do horses, side hike the peak on your way to Lobo. Nothing to worry about there. So missed opportunity, go ahead and add horses there. And like I said, this is a quick run through. I wasn't in the conversations. I don't know the updates. I'm a little out of practice. Maybe this was brought up and logistically it didn't work out. But that's what I would do. Okay, what's going on here? Miners Park. They're going from Miners Park to Tooth Ridge, Stockade Trail. Oh yeah, so here's the deal. They're doing conservation that day. So Miners Park, the conservation. I like this itinerary. I think it was cool. I think this is the one that they can get their whole 50-miler conservation hours in. I thought that's a really cool idea. All right, so 7:30 a.m. at North Fork, Uraka. All right, so they're going to hike from Miners Park up and over to North Fork, Uraka super early. So they get there at 7:30 a.m. for that. And then they get done at 10:30 a.m. And then they have to hike all the way to Tooth Ridge in, hotter part of the day. And so what I would do just to hit the easy button here and do the Schaefer's Pass here, just camp out the pass. And that way, maybe you can even move their time later for conservation so that, here they go from Bear Caves to Crater Lake. Say they get to Miners, that means they're getting to Miners Park, maybe in the afternoon. They have to pick up food there. And later in the summer, monsoon season, afternoon, a lot of times you can't climb because the weather. And at Miners Park, it's the rocks are so far away that you call the weather conservatively because it's a long hike up there to get turned around. And so maybe the next morning, since they're only going to Schaefer's Pass, they could even potentially climb the next morning and then do conservation. I don't think that's really realistic, but it does give them more. They don't have to rush super early in the morning to get that conservation done, and then yeah, hike in from there, no problem. All right, 1212. Okay, I love the elevation profile. That's nice. I like that right here. We're utilizing an underutilized trail. So this is acknowledging the traffic flow corridor and bottleneck and issues going from, if you wanted, I think this is a line camp here. If you want to go line camp to, that's probably like Lower Bonito, and then that's probably Fish Camp. Okay, so yeah, that's what's going on. A lot of times when you're going on the southern corridor to Fish Camp, it's just a whole lot of traffic and not a lot of trails. And so I really like how this itinerary tries to utilize this Webster's Pass here. I think that's an underutilized trail and a really neat trail, and it's pretty. And so I love that. But here's the challenge, and this is why I would not do it. So yeah, it is a rugged trek, so it's a little bit higher level. But once again, whether it's rugged or super strenuous, the first 2 days really need to be kept simple for the ranger. And this 7.2 miles, and this is almost the highest elevation gain. So the second day in the backcountry, and the crew is going their almost highest elevation gain. Meanwhile, the rangers trying to make sure that they're covering all the instruction. And so once again, just respecting the rangers' time, reaffirming their duties and responsibilities, and not trying to squeeze program or make them fit to a certain trek to the ranger needs to be the number one priority, and we need to fit everything around it. So in this case, the 7.2 miles on day 2 is just kind of unacceptable there. And so I would do something different with that. Comanche Creek to Red Hills. Okay, yeah, so once again, just moving this description, changing the wording a little bit to help our logistics staff out. If they don't know necessarily this deal. Once again, just coming back to the importance of getting the logistics staff in the backcountry, and that has multiple benefits, staff recognition and training and cultivation and retention. But just go ahead and, it's an easy thing to do. Just climb Mount Phillips ahead of Clear Creek, and because you're going from Comanche Creek, head up to Red Hills super early in the morning. You don't even need to set up camp. Just hang your bear bags and make a pack line on a tree, grab your day packs, and then it's such an easier loop when you don't have to have your packs that way. That way, you're also hitting Mount Phillips earlier in the day, less likely for weather issues, and then Mount Phillips, you're going to go down the OA trail to Clear Creek, and once again, maybe now you have time for the firearms. I don't know what the demand is on Clear Creek's black powder shooting, but if the demand's not high, then it's an opportunity to include more crews, and I think that's very doable with this Mount Phillips hike days if you do it this way. All right, what's going on here? So PJ pickup on this day. All right, let's find out where the real issue is and backdate from there. We'll be into Miners Park. Oh yeah, so I saw this a couple times. Miners Park to Tooth Ridge. So they're gonna, Beaubien to Miners Park. So they're gonna leave Beaubien. They're gonna climb Trail Peak. Everybody should climb that mountain. It's a really neat historical piece of property. So we want a lot of crews avoid it because they feel pressed for time, and so we do want them to climb that mountain, Crater Lake, and then hope you get to Miners Park in time for rock climbing and rappelling. And so that's just, we're setting our poor staff up. You know, they are the customer service first responders, and all summer long, they're going to have to be dealing with advisors. You know, yeah, we do. You know, we say it in logistics, we say it in the Philmont prep seminars. The ranger can tell it to them, the staff. But at the end of the day, if they read it here, it's going to just set that impression for them. And so we're setting ourselves up for risk there. So here's what I would look at doing. You know, they can't move rock climbing to the next day because they do have to get to Tooth Ridge. But what they can do is, once again, Trail Peak is you can side hike it really easily with a day pack, and then you're not having to carry your packs up that super strenuous trail. So it's a little bit extra mileage, but I think that those extra miles are much easier than carrying a pack up. So I'd move that to Beaubien the day before. Once again, Red Hills down to Beaubien. Following the ridgeline is great. You get to check out Bonito Peak and Big Red Peak. And so you want to encourage that. But coming back to the PJ issue, where they have to pick up food at PJ and they're going from Red Hills to Beaubien, you know, it's an argument can be made that it's easier to go downhill from Red Hills and then just follow the stream up from there to PJ and then go up to Beaubien that way. And so you're going to have crews do that, even though you say, or maybe we don't say it here, but you tell crews to take the ridge line and come on down. But long story short, I moved this down here again, just like before. So yeah, climb Trail Peak on this day, move in the PJ side hike, pick up food on day 9. Allows you more time on this day. So you book it from Red Hills down to Beaubien. You take your showers, and then you can put your what I would do, I wouldn't do conservation this day. I'd move horse rides to this day. They're pretty tired after a long day of hiking right here. And so let the horses hike, and they can have horse rides in the afternoon, take their showers after that. And then the conservation project, yeah, they got that here at 7:30. So they do conservation that morning, which is nice. It's in the cool part of the day. Another reason not to do conservation this afternoon in the hotter part of the day, let the horses take the heat and you just sit on their back. Conservation AM, and then it's a neat little side hike down to PJ from there to pick up food. Same deal as before. So now you can pick up 3 days worth of food at Apache Springs. You're not having to carry food up and over Clear Creek on this heavy mileage day because you just drop it at Red Hills real quick. And so you're not having to worry about weight with food. And then you pick up your 3 days of food at PJ. And once again, you no longer need this commissary here. I think that when I was there, we got really commissary hungry for commissaries. And, you know, and commissaries and program people, you get this, it becomes a priority for you because that's, you know, your thing. And so you have this sort of mission creep or program creep or commissary creep where you're building new infrastructure and you're building bigger programs and adding staff. And it's important that we come back to the drawing board and back to the basics every once in a while. Realize the Philmont experience is not all about program and things like that. It's about that interactions with staff, and sometimes having too much program or too many commissary stops, it dilutes the magic of all the other programs. And so having fewer programs can actually make your customers more satisfied because they're more unique that way. And then also accentuating your trail camps, building more trail camps with less program. We're forgetting that trail camps are really important as well for things like self-reflection and solitude. You know, the ranger, I think we can do more for passive programming for crews in trail camps. And when you're increasing your trail camp use, it means that you're decreasing the heavy use of your staff camps. You know, wear and tear on the land, the high impact areas, your program resources, your staff burnout factor, and then of course your payroll. You know, looking at payroll, and if you have more utilization of the backcountry camps, and not just to save money, but to use backcountry camps in ways that can accentuate their program and their experience and make it better. You know, for example, maybe the ranger or maybe you have like a trail camp Philmont program guide, and you have a list of programs that they can do. They can self-facilitate in a trail camp, like uh, spend 2 hours writing a letter. I did this when I was at Northern Tier. Write a letter to your council back at home and tell them about your experience. Tell them what you were like before Philmont, what your experience is like, and how you're going to take it home with you. And that is just such a wonderful thing to do in the backcountry because your letter has a lot more impact that way. It's more meaningful to you. It's a secret way to have kids um, provide self-reflection. And then also it's a great marketing strategy to get Philmont into the local councils and things like that. So anyway, long story short, by moving PJ down here, you no longer need this Miners Park pickup. You're saving your commissary staff, your commissary food deliveries, your inventory, your bottlenecks and lines at the commissaries. There's lots of trickle down benefits to there. Okay, I think that's kind of explains some of it. All right, 1214 looks good, looks good. Oh, this is just a simple typo, but it comes, so Abreu, I'm guessing that's probably old Abreu because it says trail camp here and you always want to have a trail camp for your first day. So that's probably just old Abreu, simple typo. There's a lot of that in here. And I think it comes back to these big itinerary meetings. And I think that sometimes you get this group think. I think that when you have so many people in a room, I don't know if people assume that other people will catch the mistakes, but there's certainly less of an incentive for individual responsibility. Nobody feels as much ownership in the project, and so therefore there's less accountability in the projects. And so I think having 2 or 3 really dedicated people, this is something that would easily get caught on just a very basic review of the itineraries. And so I think, I don't know how it's done now, but when I was there, we had a lot of people, and I think more people actually resulted in more misses like this because of the group think. And you're kind of holding the staff hostage, and it's a lot of payroll, and there's other things there. So, once again, I would look at the design of how we are managing the process for creating the itineraries and how we handle that. And then also, of course, the timeline. So this could have been, all these typos could have been missed because our timeline has slowly creeped where we're really rushing at the deadline right before Christmas to get everything done and in place. And that's when you do things like this, or you enter it in the system, at the 12th hour, 11th hour, and then that's when you realize that, oh, we double booked a campsite, and now you're having to do those tweaks without seeing the full consequences. And so moving that whole timeline up like a month and making sure that we have lots of time so that, too, our conservation staff, there's a lot of misses up here in the GIS, and you need to respect the time of your teammates and make sure that conservation staff and your publishers and your administrators have plenty of time to put these other pieces into place after you actually develop the itineraries. But yeah, simple typo there. 1215, great design. I love the route here. It's visually appealing. Wonderful elevation profile, slowly increasing over time. And what I like to see is you have sort of like an up-down, because then they're getting to elevation and then coming back down to a low elevation. If you've ever done mountain climbing, like I did Kilimanjaro, and that's sort of the design where you get to the elevation, but then you come down in elevation. And if you're sensitive to elevation, that's a good way to do it. But just gradual increase over time, and then at the end of the trek, you finish on a mountaintop experience, and you want that to be later in your trek. All right, what's going on here? Lots of red circles. All right, Crater Lake to PJ. Oh yeah, so this is tough. They're going uphill. They're going to hike Trail Peak, and they got to get to PJ. Hike to Trail Peak Conservation Project. Let's take a look at that. Conservation Project, 2 p.m. at Po-Bien. Okay, so they're going to get up early. We don't really have to worry about program here. They can probably get that done and all that. That's no problem. But they're going to have to get up super early if they want to hike Trail Peak. And whether they hike Trail Peak early or not, actually, 2 p.m. at conservation here means that you're rushing. you get done at 5 and then have to hike down to PJ at 5. So now you're getting to that camp around that staff's meal time. And I'm guessing your first meal in this pickup would probably be dinner that day. Maybe breakfast. I hope it's breakfast the next morning. But obviously you're dealing with an issue here when your conservation's at 2 p.m. You're not going to get to PJ until 7 p.m. and then you're going to have to start dinner at that time. And this is still day 3, so the crew is still learning the processes. They're not in the performing stage of their development where they can cook dinner really easily, and so it's going to take them longer. So long story short, I think there's a timing issue here. A lot of it comes around your conservation time, but also Crater Lake to PJ that is a lot of miles, and then some elevation on that day, and it's a day 3 of their trek. Let's see, is it not quite the longest day of their trek, but just about on day 3. And so I just simply change this to Beaubien. And I'm sure that as this was being created, Beaubien can get overwhelmed with crews. It's the easy answer for a lot of itineraries because it's like in the middle of everything. But in this case, I think that this is justified going to Beaubien. And unfortunately, you want to use all your camps because they all have neat features, and you want to give crews sort of that intimate feel. And like I said, Beaubien, the crowds can be a lot, but yeah, I'd put them at Beaubien. That way they do the conservation project and not have to worry about PJ. But and so yeah, and then we moved the food pickup to the next morning. That's right. Okay, so PJ or Beaubien to Agua Fria. This helps balance out your mileage a little bit better. So I think Crater Lake to Beaubien, that's probably more like 6 miles, 7 miles. If you're hiking Trail Peak, that's about 7 miles. Beaubien down to August. So then this becomes more like a 5.5 mile day or something like that. So you're balancing that out better. Pick up food at 8 a.m. Get to fly tying and fishing at Agua Fria. Yeah, that's no problem there. You can do that easily. All right, so looking on, you got 2 staff camps in a row. Not ideal. Once again, this weird 2.2 miles and 5.1 miles. We've seen that a couple times in the itineraries. It's just a weird short mileage, long. I'm sure it was done because it had to be, but then too, if you're picking up food at Apache Springs, I think sometimes we're blinded by what we think should be done, but if I built a commissary at Apache Springs, I'd want all my crews to use it to justify building up a commissary there. But if you're picking up food at PJ here, you now have a much longer time window before you need to pick up your next food. I would go ahead and not worry about picking up food at Apache. The cost of that food increases with your fuel consumption, driving it all the way out to Apache. And so having them pick up at PJ saves you on food costs there. Here's the biggest deal. So this is kind of weird. You got 2 dry days in a row. That's never ideal. And then that's not the worst part. Is it's this weird 2.2 mile. It almost feels like they put this day in here like a place filler to just make the itinerary work. Because here, yeah, you got your big loop. You're doing Clear Creek and all that this day. And so, yeah, that's a long day. But then they're just going to jump down. There's a typo there. Look at this. That's a typo. Let's see. That is probably 77, 1274. That's going to be your Thunder Ridge. That's going to be your Mount Phillips to Thunder Ridge right there. There's no elevation gain going Thunder Ridge to Cyphers. And I think that's probably more like 1,000 foot. But yeah, 2 dry camps here. And this is the issue. This is a safety issue, not just the dry camps, but the safety issue with this, when you have water at Red Hills, this is seen a couple times in the itineraries. When you're going from Mount Phillips, when you say water at Red Hills, what they're going to do is go from Mount Phillips. That is a downhill. I don't know if it's about like 800 feet to Red Hills. And then you say climb Comanche Peak. And I realize with the effort here, the risk and the effort here that's probably been made. So Red Hills, the easiest route from Mount Phillips to water at Red Hills to Thunder Ridge is the contour road. And so I'm sure that's what crews are doing. They're getting water at Red Hills and just simply taking contour road. That's a very dangerous road to have crews hike on because there's just no shoulder and a lot of turns. And so then what you're asking them here with their itinerary is to climb back up to Comanche Peak. And if I was a crew, crews would be motivated to not do this because they would look at it and they say, well, that's dumb. Why am I going to go from Mount Phillips all the way down 800,000 feet and then literally straight back up almost in the same direction I just came? You know, Mount Phillips to Comanche Peak is like nothing. It's just like a very short, you know, I don't know if it's even a mile. I think it's a kilometer ridgeline hike. And so you're making them do this big downhill, big uphill again. And and you say like, yeah, pass through cruise, your program is going to be optional for the on our end of things. And so you're giving them the impression that it's also optional for the crews to participate in programming here. So this would come back to your dedicated logistics staff and ranger training to say, don't hike on the roads. But you can tell crews that all day long and they're still going to do it. And so really what we can use the itineraries here is just to mitigate this safety issue. And the way to do that would be to reduce these dry camps, not have two in a row and this weird wonky 2.2 thing here. And let's see maybe how we would do that. Let's do Agua Fria. So what I would do here, Agua Fria is fine. Bobby and Agua Fria is fine. Let's go ahead and do Agua Fria. Okay, this is what I would do. Let's do Agua Fria to Apache is fine. For Mount Phillips, let's go ahead and just move this one to I would move this to Clear Creek. So let's go clear here because that helps disperse our staff camps better. So clear here, and then let's backdate from there. So if they're going to clear here, what I would do is maybe Porcupine here. So Porky here. And then let's do Crooked here. Yep, that's going to be good. Okay, so that's going to do a few things. Crooked. It balances out your mileage a lot better. So once again, with this Bobian thing, your mileage here is going to be 5. Agua Fria, so this is going to be more like 7 miles to Crooked. Crooked to Porky, that's a nice short jaunt. It's not too hard. But this is the thing that you're going to do there. So looking at program wise, you want your crew to go Agua Fria to Crooked. You want them to spend as much time as Apache as possible right here. So we're going to spend all day at Apache here. That's it. Yeah. So let's do that all day at Apache. You want them to really get that full benefits of that program at Apache. So then they get to Crooked late. So then they do a Crooked program the next day because it's only a short hike to Porcupine from there. So then they can spend all morning having fun with animals the next day on their way to Porcupine because it is a pretty short hike for 2 days there. Porcupine. So Porky to Clear, this is where I would bring back in your food. So it's a little bit weird, but once again, I think it's better use of our commissaries, and I think the timing fits better for our crews and giving them time to get that food and all that. So I'm going to use a different color so that we can figure out what we're doing here. Camping headquarters, food, 1, 2. PJ food here. They're going to pick up food starting at lunch on this. They'll be there at breakfast and they'll pick up lunch. And they'll have 1, 2. They will eat breakfast at Porky and they could even have lunch and so they can maybe even start with just dinner here at PJ. And so it's weird. You're saying, oh, they're going to go to PJ twice. They're crossing themselves, and you don't want itineraries to cross themselves, but no, they're not. So Porky to PJ, that's a simple. It's like a 15-minute walk, and so it's not really out of their way. They're not crossing the same trail twice. They're just going just a quick side hike to PJ to pick up food that morning, and then hiking up to Clear Creek from PJ. It's a long hike, but it's a nice hike, and so even if they are a little bit delayed picking up food at PJ, they should still get to Clear. It is elevation change, but it's a pretty it's forgiving trail there. And so then they get to do the Clear program. Maybe don't offer guns just in case the timing doesn't work out. Perfect. Okay. And then I think that would be more like maybe like a 7 mile day. So you're starting to flatten out your miles per day, and that's really nice. You're giving crews like a consistent mileage per day. So Clear Creek, and then once again alternating your staff camps, and then also reducing your dry camps, and then yes, so then this mitigates your the safety issue. The whole reason why we're backdating these solutions is the safety issue, and so now they don't have to worry about water at Red Hills, and they're not going to hike on the road and get run over by a chaplain going down the contour road, because they're going from Clear Creek up and over to Thunder Ridge, and that's and then you're not making them question your sanity by going from Phillips to Big Red and then straight back up to Comanche. It's a nice ridgeline hike. It's a very, very well flowing hike to do the Clear. The OA trail is beautiful. Phillips, and then stay on the ridgeline for the Comanche, and then come on down to Thunder Ridge. That's a wonderful hike, and that then balances out your mileage much better. I don't know. I think that's probably closer to like 8 there, something like that. Cool. I like how this is turning out. What else? Cypher's Mine, Clark's Fork. Oh, there you go. So picking up PJ on this day. 1, 2, 3. So yeah, you're stretching the limit for days that you want to carry food, but you do want to keep in mind, you do have a chuck wagon here, so that's one less meal that you're carrying at PJ. By the time you're actually hiking the mountain, you're carrying less food, and so and then yeah, your hike-in day, you're not carrying a full day's meal there. So I think this still more or less qualifies, maybe one extra meal of our 3-day goal for picking up food. So once again, just the benefits of reducing your commissary needs and having 2 pickups. You're instead of having crews pick up 1 day of food at a time or 2 days of food at a time, just have them pick up 3 days of food at a time. It's all part of the high adventure experience. And yeah, so 2 commissaries instead of 3 with the trickle down benefits from there. Clark's Fork, horses. Oh yeah, so then that's the other thing is horses is a potential customer service failure here, because you're saying let's go from Cypher's Mine. First of all, if they don't get there in time for the mine tour from Thunder Ridge, if they get there and it's too late to sign up for a mine tour, they will, knowing crews and the general preference, they will prioritize a mine tour the next morning over the other program that's offered the next morning, because that's like one of the #1 program features, like getting to go in a mine, and it's a super impactful program as well. So we want them to do it, but that's what's going to happen if they can't do it this day. They're going to move this the next day, and so if you're going Cypher's Mine, it's not too far out of the way, but it's still out of the way to go down to Hunting Lodge, and then jump over to Cedo, and you don't get to do any program there. You don't really have time to do a program there. And ideally, when you're making them go to Cedo for food, you want to also give them some program there. And so the PJ lets you take off that Cedo because it was sort of an underperforming feature of the itinerary already. And then they can go directly to Clark's Fork and get there in time for the horses. Once again, we want our participants to use we're going to offer horses. We want them to be used. We're paying for the horses, and people will definitely want to do it. We're paying for the staff. Let's make sure that the crews get there in time to ride the horses. And even if they have a mine tour, they can still get there in time for the horses and the chuck wagon dinners. So cool. 9/11. Oh yeah. So let's look at this itinerary. I love this itinerary. This is one of the 9-day. I love the 9 and 7-day itineraries. I love the trying to fit all the components into the itineraries without, you know, the draw. People say, oh, 7-day itinerary. That means they have to go to a staff camp every day. And so finding ways to give them the Philmont experience, but also not have this huge influx of 7-day crews in our staff camps. It's not fair to our 12-day crews when the 7-day crews get to stay every night at a staff camp. And so I love those challenges with those programs, giving the program, doing it safely, but also having that balance between staff and trail camp. So this is a 9-day program, and it's still in the catalog today. It's been changed a little bit, so I went back to this is one that I made, and it's still used today, but it's been tweaked as we've opened up different areas. So I just wanted to show you an example of an itinerary that I made and why I like it. 9-day program. So visually appealing here. You have just off the bat a nice loop is good, because you get to come full circle and finish where you started. And I think that provides a sense of completion for the crew, like closing the chapter. You can see each day is pretty equidistant here. And looking at I love this elevation profile. Look how steady that is on those days. That is wonderful, especially on the shorter treks. It's harder to do the big challenge and like hard easy, up down, up down. For the shorter days, you want to have a different strategy there by just having a very consistent elevation profile grade. You provide a consistent grade over multiple days. That's really what you're going for with the shorter treks. And so that's just really beautiful there. This sort of increased grade here, that's going to be your Bali loop day. As you can see, it's the same forward and back. And then a quick decline down at the end, and coming downhill at the end. That's where you really want to put in all your miles. For these shorter treks, you want them going downhill for their miles, so they can still get the miles and reach some farther out camps, but do it on the downhill side of their itinerary. I really am proud of the mileage distribution. It can be really hard for these shorter treks, the logistics, to give them consistent miles throughout the day. And so I like how this is well balanced. O'Neill, Dean Skyline, Santa Claus. So let's jump back up here to the route. Nice balance between staff camps and trail camps. You still get some good ranger training in. So as you can see, even on the shorter treks, you still need to keep these days short for ranger training. It doesn't matter, if we're not doing it safely, we shouldn't be doing it at all. It doesn't matter how great your trek is if you are shortchanging these first 2 days. So as you can see, this trek prioritizes these 2 days, even though we're promising these shorter trek, we're promising these customers a Philmont experience. And so there's this motivation to want to fudge a little bit on these first 2 days, but we need to remember the basics of the experience and what we're trying to do here. So keeping those short is so essential. Great. You're still getting, ooh, look at that. You're still getting challenge events early in the trek. That's where you want them. Yes, that's excellent. Baldy Skyline, that's probably where the Cons project was. So Cons was probably this day, and that's great too. So challenge events are very scalable based on time constraints by the crews. And so that's a great option for a day like this. Your ranger has left you that morning, so you don't have to worry. So you can put Cons there. You want to get Cons out of the way early on the shorter treks. And so this is a great way too to build the elevation. So they are accomplishing a meaningful task that's required for the Arrowhead patch. They're doing the challenge events, which is great for team building. You want that early in the trek, but it can be modified to a shorter duration. And then, yeah, you're spending more time at the lower elevations to help them acclimate as well. Cool. And then, so the Baldy skyline, they kind of stay on the ridge line. Once again, so if you did like, if you were going over to French Henry and then up, you get a weird elevation profile where you would have this downhill and then a steeper uphill. And so that's why the skyline is so great for the shorter treks here, as the steady grade up. Copper Park Loop, that's really cool because here you're not doing the whole loop around Baldy Town. I think that for this trek, overnighting at Copper Park and side hiking first day for Baldy Town, whether you pick it up on the way or just come wrap around and pick up your food there, take your showers. And then the second day, side hiking Baldy, because that is the easy side to side hike Baldy from. So the great thing is you're increasing elevation and you're keeping their camp at a higher elevation. If you put them at Baldy here, for example, then they're not staying at higher elevation. Or if you did the full loop, you're making them go below the elevation of Copper Park and come back up again. Because they're time constraints, you want them to not lose any elevation that they gain. And so that's why I had them side hike from here. It looks a little bit weird because it is a side hike right here. It's not a nice loop, but time-wise and elevation, I think the benefits are for the side hike there. Okay. And then, yeah, from Copper Park down to Rich Cabins, great program opportunities. You can, let's see, it looks like I didn't put it here. But, you know, it's easy to run through Cypher's. You have options there, and you can do, if you want to do the French Henry, you know, maybe you pick that, or if you want to do the Poblano, you know, you pick that, and you can kind of giving the choice to the crews, giving them ownership of their trek makes them more satisfied because they chose it. And so, yeah, they can't do everything, but in this case, you can confidently say that they have these program options and that they should choose, you know, some of them. So for going from Copper Park to Rich Cabins, they have a number of options there. Rich Cabins, you know, you got a great campfire there. You do touch with the L&T, which brings in, once again, the Philmont Wilderness Pledge and things like that. And then you got a campfire. So you always want to end a trek with a campfire. That's another impactful program to any time in the trek, but at the end especially. And so here you get 2 campfires. Where's the other one? Cantina. So you get to end with 2 campfires, and it's all downhill, so you can get in your mileage there. And from Rich Cabins to Pony Hill, here's how I think I had proposed this differently, and maybe we just put it this way, but the shorter treks, this is when you want to do horse rides on AM before the bus leaves, or maybe this is when you do the action shooting. So a lot of times I'm hesitant to do the horse rides and action shooting at Pony Hill because most of the time the crews are having to have long, hot hikes to their next camp. And so doing an AM program and then having to hike after that, usually with food, is a safety concern. But the last day is a great chance to squeeze that in before their bus back to base camp. And for the short treks, that's what you have to do to get them more programmed. So that's your options there. Great. So anyway, that's an example of a trek that I made, why I like the shorter treks, but I think that kind of shows the quality that I was looking for when I was designing treks. And like I said, some of my treks are still in use today, and at least in part. And that kind of just, describes some of the things I want to do. You know, other things with the itineraries and maps, something that I don't know if we've done it yet or not, but when I was there, I was trying to move our maps back to a 1 to 24,000 scale instead of a 1 to 31,000 scale for our sectionals. The overall map is great, but the sectionals at a 1 to 31 scale. So what we had done 3 sectionals and then a Vive Vidal sectional. So we actually had 4 sectional maps. And that gave us the ability to do the 1 to 24,000, which just gave you a much greater scale, so you could see more specifics about the trips and things like the trail routes and things. Moving it back to a 1 to 31,000 scale The reasoning behind it I could see was that reducing your sectional maps from from 4 to 3. So now crews have to purchase less maps or things like that. But it really brings that scale down to a point where you can no longer get the definition that you need when you're a crew trying to figure out what switchback you're on, or the staff camp you're trying to get to, or use your triangulation with prominent geographical features. The 1 to 31,000 scale is not detailed enough, and so I had discussed with some of the conservation staff about moving back to a 1 to 24,000 scale. I don't know if that's been done, but that would be a discussion that I would bring up. The Kimberlin reroutes, I identified some opportunities when we lost the Kimberlin, some reroute opportunities for crews going up into the Valle. I'm not sure if they've been adopted or not, but that's something that I love prospecting that stuff, and I've done a lot of it, so I know it in very detailed. That's I think pretty much describes everything. But in general, some of my goals would just be how we organize the committee and develop the itineraries, because there's clearly been a lot of misses, and I know that happened. I mean, I'm not blaming or shaming. I know in that same situation, I'd probably be in the same boat because I've been a full-time employee for 15 years. I know how it goes. But my goals would be moving the timeline earlier and figuring out a way that we can try and have less of these just real basic typos and things like that taken care of, because this is our first impression for crews. They really dive into this in detail. When I was a kid, this is like the only thing I looked at, and then people get frustrated when there's these misses. And then in season two, we're setting our staff up for failure, things like that. And so doing it right the first time, making sure it's quality, the customers pay for it. Philmont's fees are increasing a lot, and I think that our quality needs to reflect that, and our credibility as the lead and the flagship of the BSA. Our credibility stands on this document as one of our primary things that stands on. It needs to be accurate. So those would be my goals, and I hope this helped describe some of my observations and things like that. Thank you.